लड़की बच्चा YouTube भी चलेगी. Yoga is very, very interesting topic.
Yeah.
Tamil is a ruler, was very great yogis. 3,000 years he lived. 3,000 years. That's what they say. Oh, we wrote the 3,000 sutras, one sutra every year. We can begin.
Huh?
We can begin.
1 minute. I'm just getting the slide ready. 1 minute.
Yes. Yes, sir, of course.
Okay. 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 You can tell me, Maharaj. I'll go ahead.
We'll begin.
Now start Pranama? Okay. Right.
Yes, yes.
Namaste. And good evening to all who have gathered. Let me start with a prayer to my teachers. Shri Krishna Vagisha Yatishwarabhyam Samprapta Chakrankana Bhashya Sarham Shri Notna Rangendra Yatau Samarpita Swam Shri Krishna Mariyang Guruvariyamidhe Virodhe Kartike Mase Shatatara Krutodhayam Yogacharyam Krishna Mariyang Guruvariyamaham Bhaje Krishna Suri Daya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam Srimad Venkatanathāryam Vandeham Yogadeshikam Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. At the outset, I would like to humbly give my pranams and thanks to Pujya Swami Atmapriyanandaji Maharaj, who commanded me to give this talk on yoga in ancient Tamil traditions in South India, with particular reference to the immortal Tamil text, Tirumandhiram of Tirumula, a Siddha Yogi. A complete topic was chosen and given to me by Maharaj. Just let me start to say that Tamil, as it has to be pronounced, I'll be pronouncing this as Tamil, which is the way in which it is to be pronounced in the language, is an ancient living language. And yoga, the art and science of dealing with human life, is of also an ancient origin. So there is certainly a connection, and there are yoga traditions in Tamil. There appears to be a few traditions, more than one. But most important thing is, the oldest yogis were all called, they are called Siddhas. Siddha in Tamil, Siddhas in Tamil. What is Siddha? Siddha, the one who has reached, perfected, has attained. Sadhana is a Sanskrit word which means practice. Siddha and Tamil Siddhar means the one who has done the sadhana and reached. There are people who will be doing sadhana, but they might not have reached. So there is who have reached it. Also, the 8 Ashtamaha Siddhis called Anima, minuteness, Lagima, lightness, Mahima, largeness, Prapti, attainment, Prakamyam, desires, Vashitvam, attraction, Ishitvam, ruling power, Kamavayashatvam, that is manipulation. These are all the 8 Mahasiddhis. In fact, I have taken the Kamavashayitvam because that is how Tirumoolar himself gives in his Tirumandhiram. There are some versions where Garima is taken in the place of Kamavashayitvam, but say because Mahima is there, maybe Garima includes, it's a part of Mahima. But we are going to see the Tirumandhiram has 72 verses on this itself, the Ashtama Siddhis. Now, there are 18 Siddhas. Siddharth, I am using the word Siddharth because that is how in Tamil we have to say Siddhargal. There are 18 Siddhas who are held in high reverence. Of them, Tirumoolar has a very special place. I am not giving the names of all the 18. Let us look into Tirumoolar, a background. There are some 3-4 ideas about his time, but some people say some authorities say that he belongs to 8 CE. And there is a significance in the name with regard to the story of his life that we should know. Originally, he was called Sundarar as a yogi, and he was in Mount Kailash doing his meditation in the vicinity of the Kailash in the presence of Shiva. And he travels down to south to meet another Siddha who is called Agastya, with whom he is a co-student to Nandi. So he comes to meet Agastya in Podiya Mountains, Podiya Malai, which is down south, even now it is there, near Tirunelveli. On his way, he found himself in the outskirts of a place called Sathanur. This is in Tamil Nadu. And he noticed he's going by walk. In those days, people will have to walk only, so he walks. And being a yogi, he has no issues about walking completely. So up and down from the north to the south, he is coming by walk. And he noticed a herd of cows sleeping near a cart. And taken aback, he wanted to know why, and he found that the cow herd had died of snake bite. And the cows, having lost the master, they are weeping. And the name of the cow herd was Moola. And using his yogic powers, even Yoga Sutra talks about the yogic powers of Parakaya Pravesham. So he entered the body of the dead cow herd to appease the cows and take them back into their shed, the house. So cows were happy, and he led them to the house of the cow herd and leaves there. And he does not even see the wife, or he is indifferent to all people there. He sits in meditation. And now, on return to the place where he saw the cows and where he had left his original body, he finds it is not there. Finding that it is the act of Lord Shiva, who had a mission to spread the teachings, he spends the rest of his life in dissemination of the path of knowledge. And that is how he came to be known as Tirumoolar. Tirumoolar, the word Thiru is added because of the respect to him. Let us come to Tirumandhiram quickly and find out what this is. A magnificent work. This is Tirumoolar. Tirumandhiram is one of the magnificent work. And the word Thiru and Mandiram are there. Often, a lot of Sanskrit words have come into the Tamil language. Both are very ancient, original by themselves. But in usage, we can find a lot of Sanskrit words coming into it, because sometimes they would like to use them in the way. For example, the word yoga is a Sanskrit word and it is used as yoga only. Sometimes they will call it as yogam in Tamil. In Tamil, they will call it as yogam. They will add the word im. So, Tirumandhiram has got two parts. One is Thiru and another is Mandiram. This Mandiram has come from the word mantra. Thiru is a respect, holy, auspiciousness, important. So mantra, as some of us or most of us would know, it is something like mananat trayate iti mantraha. So that which protects the one who repeats it. In mantra has got more than one meaning, or the one who contemplates on it. The mantra here, the Tirumandhiram, can be considered to be a garland of mantras. In fact, every one of the verse, we will call it as verse because it is in the form of a Tamil verse called Payiram, Pashuram, Payiram. And every one of them are like mantras. In fact, I'm going to take some of them, about 17 to 20 of the mantras, and I'm going to repeat the mantras and see how the hearing of the mantra itself is like important. Now, Yoga Sutra is like that. We generally repeat Yoga Sutra before mentally repeat. We repeat it aloud for the vibrations that they produce. Recently, a video has come where some experiments were done on recitation of Yoga Sutra and its impact on the system. Tirumandhiram lays the spiritual path in the realization of Lord Shiva and the Supreme Being as the Supreme Being, and thus is known as Shaiva Siddhanta. It is a darshana, like we like to call it as Tirumular Darshana. It's a Shaiva Siddhanta, and it has Lord Shiva as the central god or Supreme Being. Tirumandhiram, in the form of Tamil poems, as I told, is special in nature. The meter is very special. And in all, it has 3,000 verses, divided into 9 chapters, and each chapter is called Tantram, not Mantram. It is called Tantram. Tantram can be also, Tantra comes from the same word Tantra. Could be technique or knowledge. A lot of words can be given to the word Tantra. Here, a lot of techniques are being given. So every one of them is Tantra. Like in Bhagavad Gita, every chapter is called Yoga. Here it is called as Tantra, Tantram. The third chapter, we went into 9 chapters of 3,000 verses. The third chapter contains, which is called the third, Moondravadu Tantram. Third chapter contains 335 verses, and it deals with the Ashtanga Yoga. The contextual the context in which this talk is going on is about yoga psychology, and particularly yoga in the Tamil traditions. So I have proposed to take this chapter only, and even in this chapter, it will not be possible to give the 335 verses. So I have to take, considering the time frame, I have taken selected verses, and I will tell you the reason why I have taken the selected verses. There are 335 verses which contain the message of Ashtanga Yoga. Tantram 3, it's called. In fact, I am giving first a overview of how this Tantram 3 of Ashtanga Yoga goes, 335 verses. For example, even in there are subsections. The first section is called Ashtanga Yoga. It has got 4 verses. The second is Yama. It talks about Yama, which is one of the Ashtanga Yoga. It has 2 verses. Niyama, which has 3 verses. Asana, 6 verses. Pranayama, 14 verses. Pratyahara, 10 verses. Dharana, 10 verses. Dhyana, 20 verses. Samadhi, 14 verses. Fruits of Ashtanga Yoga, very interesting. It has got 8 verses because there are Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtama Siddhis. As I was just now telling, for the Ashtama Siddhis, which I listed out, which I have taken from this section, is 72 verses totally, which is the largest part of this. Kala, which is a very important part, Kala unwavering. In fact, Kala, the concept of Kala is very, very important, and every Siddhanta deals with Kala differently. And the Kala in this is very, very important. I am not going to cover it, but it has got what is this Kala, how it goes about, and way to Kaya Siddhi, getting the perfection. Wheel of time, Kala Chakra. There are 30 verses for the wheel of time, Kala Chakra. It includes even the day, the various seasons and other things. Measurement of the lifespan, 20 verses. Breath rhythm in days of the week. Very interesting part, which also I am not going to cover, but I am just telling you there are 7 verses on this. Hostile weekdays. The hostile weekdays is called as the days on which how the breath cycle is moving and all that. So when somebody wants to completely go into certain practices, they are asked to avoid certain days and choose certain days, which is very, very interesting for the practitioners of yoga and other sadhanas. Khechari Yoga, which is 26. Khechari Yoga, Pariyanga Yoga, particularly this 20, is called as Vamachara. This Pariyanga Yoga, Amuri, it's called as Amroli in Hatha Yoga Pratipika. Khechari, Pariyanga, Amroli, they are all like the Hatha Yoga Pratipika. Chandra Yoga, 33 verses, which is important. So the very speciality of the yoga part of this Tirumandhiram, right now when we start it, in the yoga tradition, there are mainly very, very important thing is the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. And certainly it is beyond, it's much earlier to even this work. And Ashtanga Yoga is from the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. But Patanjali himself says Hatha Yoga Anuशाsanam. It remained even prior to me, I am bringing it out. So this Tirumandhiram has got the Ashtanga Yoga as given by the Patanjali's version of the Ashtanga Yoga, but includes a lot more. And a lot of semblance can be seen between Hatha Yoga Pratipika and here. Hatha Yoga Pratipika appears to be a later version. And both of them have got one common thing is they belong to something called a Natha Sampradaya. I will explain this, how this Natha Sampradaya comes here. So it is Adinatha. Shiva is called as Adinatha there. And from Shiva comes the teachings of yoga. In fact, interestingly, yoga traditions at the level of Devatas are also into 3 in number. Like this belongs to the this as well as Hatha Yoga Pratipika, Natha Sampradaya. There are a lot of texts on Natha Sampradaya, including Heranda Samhita, Shiva Samhita, and all that. All comes under this category with the original teacher, first teacher being Shiva. If you take Yajnavalkya Samhita, it is supposed to have emanated from Brahma. And the Krishna's Bhagavad Gita, which is also a Yoga Shastra, is come from Vishnu, who is Krishna is none other than the Vishnu. Of course, sometimes, like our teacher Krishnamacharya says, that Patanjali is an avatar of the serpent lord, Adishesha, and it can be taken that that belongs to the Vishnu tradition. This belongs to the Natha Sampradaya. Now, I am taking up a few of the verses only, and I am going to go through them. Some of the verses I'll go through in some detail. Let us look at the first starting point. Introduction to Ashtanga Yoga. I am here, I am not giving the Tamil verses. Tamil verses I have reserved it for the following some of the other part of this. First, let us look at how the Ashtanga Yoga is introduced. And author Tirumula says, it is difficult to expound is the science of yoga, he says. So why it is difficult to expound is the question that comes into our mind, because yoga is essentially an experiential science. That's what our teacher used to say, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. And our teacher used to say, Anushasana means something which has to be anushishto, one which has to be practiced and followed, as opposed to Jignasa Shastra, which is a Brahma Sutra, says, Atato Brahma Jignasa. There you can do a lot of discussions and all. My teacher used to say, there is less discussion here. There is only practice and experience. So naturally, it is very difficult to expound. So when we have a fruit here and we take the fruit and enjoy it, and you ask the question, how was it? Difficult to expound. And the 549th verse, which is the first verse of this third tantram, says, Nandi is the teacher from whom I have received, he says. Particularly, having done 2 tantras, starting on the Ashtanga Yoga, he says, Nandi is the vehicle of Lord Shiva and the guardian deity of Kailash, teacher from whom Tirumula receives the teaching of yoga. So this is called Nandi Natha Sampradaya. I told you there are Natha Sampradayas, and this belongs to the Natha Sampradaya of the yoga. In fact, Hatha Yoga Pratipika says, Shri Adinataya Namostu Tasmai Yenopashitta Hatha Yoga Vidya. Swatma Rama, the author, will say, Adinataya. So here it is Nandinatha, who of course is the servant of Adinatha, Shiva. And it is certain that he would have received the teaching only from Shiva Adinatha. In fact, the other great Siddha, Agastya, who is the same time frame as I told earlier, he also is the student of Nandi. In fact, that is, they studied together under Nandi. So the 555th verse says, Yoga includes Kavacha, Nyasa and Mudra. But this, the whole work does not talk about Kavacha separately, Nyasa or Mudra. It talks about the Ashtanga Yoga, the all parts, which we will see some of them. But the 555th verse says Kundalini rising is a part. So this can be also called as a Kundalini Yoga. Nothing wrong in that, because there is a large part of Kundalini rising. And that is where it differs completely from Yoga Sutra. If we take Hatha Yoga Pratipika, it has got Kundalini, and rising of the Kundalini will come. But Hatha Yoga Pratipika does not have the Ashtanga Yoga. It does not have Yama Niyama. It has got Asana. It has got Pranayama, no Pratyahara. Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi will all be together into Natha Upasana. So Kundalini rising is a part. It looks like it is Hatha Yoga Pratipika. Or when you go into Ashtanga Yoga, it is like the Yoga Sutra. So it is an original work by itself, because the author has gone through the experience and is a great yogi. Ashtanga Yoga, according to the next verse, leads to Samadhi, but Samadhi doesn't stop there, it leads to Jnana. And from Samadhi comes Jnana. Of course, Yoga Sutra also talks about Samadhi leading to Jnana only, because Yoganganushthanatu Ashuddhikshaye Jnana Deeptihi Aviveka Kyate. So Jnana Deepti, so that way it is the same like the Yoga Sutra. In Jnana, what is the Jnana? Prakriti Purusha Viveka Jnana and Ishvara Jnana, so many things will come. And the author, at that point of time itself, he says, during his time, there are various paths of yoga exist, but one is recommended to take to Ashtanga Yoga. This is a very important point. So there are various paths of yoga, but one is recommended to take the Ashtanga Yoga. This is what our teacher Krishnamacharya says, Vede Yogo Baguda Proktaha Tatrashtango Yogo Mukhyaha. That's what he will say. Veda talks about, in fact, yoga's origin is called Vedas only. And there are so many paths which are given there. Everyone is recommended to go through Ashtanga Yoga. The main point is why Ashtanga Yoga is It is a well laid out path. In fact, Ashtanga Yoga is called Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. He will call this as Raja Yoga because it is just like a king's way, well laid out path. So anybody with any background can go in, and there is no need for any prior qualification, but the path go in the Ashtanga Yoga, they will reach the destination. Then 552 talks about the 8 limbs, very similar to the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. They are completely repeated. Now in Yama, Niyama, there are some interesting parts which I will cover. The Yama, which is in the case of Yoga Sutra, Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, they are all here. Then the aparigraha comes differently. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, aparigraha, Brahmacharya, aparigraha. Brahmacharya comes here. But added are something like being virtuous. Aware, with an awareness, one has to be virtuous. That's what the author says. Humble, one has to be humble. And it should be just. Sharing good things with others. Very important. It is not, yoga need not be considered to be something like individualistic. It is something sharing good things with others. Like the Vasudeva Kudumba. In fact, there is a quotation of this author, Tirumandhiram, which is very often quoted, Yam Petra Inbam Peruga Iv Vayagam. That is very special. He says, let whatever I got, let the whole world get it. That is the sharing. Now, teetotaler, he is talking about this, the idea of not consuming liquor as one of the part of Yama. Niyama, belief in God, particularly Vedas. He talks about the Vedas and he says belief in God and belief in Vedas are it's a part of Niyama. Purity. Purity, of course, is the same like Shaucha, Santosha, Tapaswadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana is the Yoga Sutra. Here, purity is like the tapas. Compassion, control over food, very important niyama, which is not given in the Yoga Sutra, very, very important. And Hatha Yoga Pratipika talks very much, and our teacher Krishnamacharya was very particular about the control over ahara niyamam. He would say that without ahara niyamam, the yoga practice will not work. Forthrightness, steadfastness, to be there, because there should not be any shake, like what the Yoga Sutra says. One should having taken up a practice, Satu Dirghakala, Nairantarya, Satkara, Adhara, Asevito, Dhrida Bhumihi, like that. Now, when it comes to asana segment, in all, there are about 6 verses. But the 6 verses covers, he says, in the 558 verse, he says there are numerous asanas. This is what Hatha Yoga Pratipika also says, numerous. And other text on yoga will also say, it is the number of asanas cannot be counted, etc. That is it. The 8 important ones, starting with Padmasana, it says, Padmasana. Swastikasana is given special place of reference, but the technique is not given here in this text. And techniques for Padmasana, Bhadrasana, Kukkutasana, and Simhasana, these 4 asanas are given in the 4 verses, starting from 559 to 562. So, adding the following, and 563 says, Bhadra, Gomukha, Padma, Simha, Sotira, not given. Veera, Sukha, or the 7. When added with Swastika, constitute the 8, and it goes like this: 80, 100, and many. And 80 is a word which we get even in the Hatha Yoga Pratipika. Hatha Yoga Pratipika talks about 13 postures or so. And 80 is a word that we get in Hatha Yoga Pratipika also. The idea of 80 postures, our teacher Krishnamacharya says that even during his time, he has seen more than 700 postures being practiced by people. and he says that even in the Sinkeri Acharyas, he has written in one book that he has seen in them practicing 700 or more of the postures. So this is about the asana segment. Asanani tavanti yavanti jivaraseha. That is what the quotation from the Bindu Upanishad. It says, Yoga Bindu Upanishad. It says, as many jivarasis are there, so many are the postures. The idea here is postures are given to us, and you need to adapt it to the individuals also. So the moment I do a posture, the same posture's name will be a bit different from what some other person did. And there are a lot of ideas about why the numbers are given a bit differently. Now, most important, from here I am going to go through about 17 verses on pranayama, and I want to read out the Tamil part of it for the purpose that even those who may not know Tamil, the moment they hear this, you'll be able to see what a nice composition it is. And on that, I'll give the English meaning and the contextual references to that. The first verse on the pranayama. Aivarku Nayagan Avur Talai Mahan Uyakkundu Yerum Kudurai Matru Undru Undu Meyyarku Patru Kodukkum Kodadu Poi Poyyare Tulli Vizhindidum Thane. See, the very verse, those who know Tamil also will have difficulty in understanding this. It will look like the sutras, and that is the idea of a mystic. When the mystic like Tirumandhiram, perfected people, Siddhas, when they talk, their talk will not be very straight. It will have these hidden meanings and all. Look at it. Aivarku Nayagan Avur Talaivan. The 5 are the senses 5, and Ur Talaivan, it is Purusha. Jiva is the word I have given here. I have taken it from one translation. But the word Purusha will also be good because Ur in Tamil is Puru. In fact, the word Purusha comes from the word Puru. Puru means city. Ur. That is the Tamil part of it is Ur. And he is the Talaimagan. He is the head, master. Prabho, that is the word used by Yoga Sutra. That Prabhoho Purushasya Aparinamitvat. So, and he is the one, he is the head of the body habitat. So this must be understood. Let us understand that this body is something which is a servant of someone which is inside. Most important point. Uyakkundu yerum kudirai matrum ondrundu. There is a horse. Some call it a steed and all that. It's a horse is a better word. Kudirai in Tamil, horse. He rides to his destined goal. So when in the journey of life, it is the prana which takes us from the birth to the death. In fact, Hatha Yoga Pratipika says, what is death is prana kaya viyogam, sharira viyogam. The body and the prana are segregated. And elsewhere and everywhere, the prana is considered to be the Atmasaka. We will see here what is this horse. The masterly one, the horse carries. Carries here means the one that whose journey it goes. Carries does not mean literally carrying. It is helping to go through the journey. The feeble one it throws away. So it has been given a simile of a horse to understand what is the role of horse. So if you don't take care of the prana, which is going to be that horse, the prana, the breath is Poyyare Tulli Vizhindidum Thane. So it throws off the person as a horse. That is why a simile of a horse is given here. So if you become sick, prana prakopa. In fact, untimely death. It is going to be talking about overcoming the death. Overcoming death means all will not be living. There are siddhas like Tirumandhiram who have lived for 3,000 years or more. But even then, they will disappear one day. So the idea of winning over death means akala marana. That is also, and power of energy, everything is there. So if our life has to be successful, if we have to go in spiritual path, it is the prana essence of this. So the essence of this verse is, it is the jiva of the senses, it is a master, it has to be a master. If it has to be a master, it must have the help of the prana, and prana carries, and prana will throw away or it will carry. This, in other words, to say, why pranayama? Control of inhalation and exhalation. Ariyan allan kudirai irandula. Víசி பிடிக்கும் விறகு அறிவார் இல்லை. கூறிய நாதன் குருவின் அருள் பெற்றால் வாரிப்பிடிக்க வசப்படும் தானே. That is Aryan Allan. It has to be in Tamil, there is a sandhi there. So the great one is the jiva. Arya also can be called in Sanskrit as Arya. Kudirai irandula is the very interesting. He has two stages or horses, or they are breath in Ida and Pingala. So they are again Kudirai, Ida and Pingala horse. Víசி பிடிக்கும் விறகு அறிவார் இல்லை. Not all know how to master this breath. If the Lordly Guru, the கூறிய நாதன் குருவின் அருளால். So the Natha, in fact, we can take it as Natha Sampradaya also. Nathan Guruin Arul Petral, the one who gets the blessings of that, Varipidika Vasapadum Thane. The horse is tamed. Here, I would like to compare it with what is stated in Hatha Yoga Pratipika. Hatha Yoga Pratipika says in the second chapter of the Hatha Yoga Pratipika, which is called Kumbhaka or Pranayama, that's the word it says. Athasane dride yogi vashihitamita ashanaha guru upatishta margena pranayaman samabhyathet. So one has to go in the path of pranayama. They must have the blessings of the guru, means to learn. And Hatha Yoga Pratipika says why we need the guru, because when pranayama is done properly, all diseases will be removed. Improper ayukta yoga abhyasena sarva roga samudbhavaha. All roga, all diseases will come. So one has to be very careful with pranayama practice, and that is why the recommendation of a guru is given. So if the one who masters the prana through the practice of pranayama, he is the master. Otherwise, the prana will throw the person away like a horse throws the rider. Breath control activates the body. This is a verse which I heard very long back, 30 years back, from one of our teachers who belongs to our tradition. And that day I actually got this memorized. It's a very interesting, very interesting verse on pranayama. Pullinum mikka puraviயை மேல் கொண்டால் கள்வுண்ண வேண்டாம் தானே கழிதரும். துள்ளி நடப்பிக்கும் சோம்பு தவிர்ப்பிக்கும் உள்ளது சொன்னோம் உணர்வு உடையோர்க்கே. What actually happens when pranayama is done? That is given here. Pranayama properly done. Look at it. Here, this breath is the way the breath moves. The way the breath moves. Actually, in yoga, breath is considered to be the vehicle of prana. There is a difference between breath and prana. They are not one and the same. The breathing that we do, inhale, exhale, they are breath. They actually is an air, which is one of the Pancha Mahabhutas, Vayu. But prana is different, as we have been seeing now. This prana is, the breath is the vehicle of prana, and the breath moves very fast. And it moves more faster than even a bird. And this, because it moves faster, the prana also moves faster, and the horse flies far, but faster than that, far headier than the wind. The pleasure it gives, how does it give? it infuses vigor, dispels laziness, let the wise listen. When one is able to, sorry if there is an omission of two words. Merkondal means the one who is able to control. Faster than word that flies, for the one who controls, for what happens? Headier than the wine. It gives happiness than the wine, pleasure. The one who hates, that is the one who is able to control. It infuses vigor. Sombal tavirtu means it removes. Actually, elsewhere it is stated that the two of the gunas, Rajas and Tamas. Tamas is responsible for laziness. It removes the Tamas also. The sensitive people, let them listen. Pranan Manattodum Peradu Adangi Pranan Irkil Tirappu Irappu Illai Pranan Madaimari Tech Arivittu Pranan Adai Per Petru Undir Nire. Let the prana merge in mind and together the two be stilled. When you bring the prana to stillness, the mind is stillness. So what is the quotation for this? Chalevate chalam chittam nischale nischalam bhavet, which is the Hatha Yoga Pradipika talks. So when the breath is stilled, the mind is stilled. When the breath is stilled, prana is also stilled. No more shall be birth and death be. That is Kaivalya. I would like to say this is a Kaivalya, reaching the Kaivalya. Because cycle of birth and death is gone. Therefore, learn to direct the breath. See, the word they have given is to direct the breath. To learn to direct the breath. The first step in pranayama. Tasmin sati shvasa prashvasayoho gati vichetaha pranayamaha. Yoga Sutra says. So people think that we just simply sitting down and inhaling and exhaling pranayama is done. We need to do a lot of preparation to get that into place, to hold on to the ability to hold and direct the breath in streams alternating left and right. It is the Nadi Shuddhi. Here itself he is introducing. And then Pranan Adai Peru Petru Undir Nire, shall you taste the nectar of life, which is the self-realization. Now, Puraka, Rechaka, Kumbhaka, or this talks about 568. Erudal Purakam, Eer Yettu Vamattal, Arudal Kumbhakam, Arubattu Nalu Adil, Urudal Muppatti Irandu Ati Rechakam, Marudal Vandrinkan Vanjagam Ame. The word Erudal, Arudal, Urudal are special word the author has given for Sanskrit which he has used, Purakam, Rechakam, Kumbhakam, which are the Sanskrit words. He has used Sanskrit words. We can see how Sanskrit words have been repeated here. So he has used Erudal, Urudal, Arudal. So what is the Purakam is to inhale. Vamatta means left nostril. Matras are 60. And the word he has used he does not exactly use the word matra, but the commentators and the translators. Matra, there are a lot of ideas about matra in yoga. We can call it as seconds, but not the usual seconds of the clock. It will be like 3 times rounding the knee cap and or sitting like this. There are so many ideas. But let us consider it as some matras or the kala part. Kumbhakam to retain 64. Rechakam 32. So 16, 64, 32, which is the ratio we call in yoga parlance, yoga practitioners and teachers, 1:4:2. No hold after exhale is given here, which is how Hatha Yoga Pradipika and other texts talks about it. Thus, alternate from left to right and right to left, which is Nadi Shodhana, with Kumbhakam in between. Breath controls make body light. Valiyinai vaangi, vayattil adakki, palingu ottu kayam, palukkinal minjam, theliya guruvin thiru arul petral, valiyinum vetu, valiyinum ame. Which means if you control the breath within stomach, here, the technique of breathing. Controlling in the stomach means you will have to inhale, the diaphragm comes down as if it is udare in Sanskrit. Hatha Yoga Pradipika says it has to go into the stomach. You can't keep it in the chest itself. So it has to go, and then you hold it after inhale. However old your body, young it will become, and with the Guru's benign grace, become lighter than air. The body becomes light because the tamas is gone. As we saw earlier, Sombal has gone, which is an expression of tamas. The body becomes heavy because of that. Because the commentator Josna of the Atyoga Pradipika will say, Gurutvam is at the level of the body. Kapha is at the level of the body, and at the level of the mind, it is tamas. Breath control gives supreme strength. Enge irikkinum puri idathile, ange adiseyya aakkaikku azhivillai, ange pidithathu vittu alavum sella, sange kurikka thalaivanum aame. Whenever you be, wherever you are, control the breath. The body, control breath means practice pranayama. In fact, Krishnamacharya says, Yame yame pranayamam dasha dasha puryat ayur vrittihi. That is the Sanskrit word says, 10 pranayamas of every 3 hours he recommends. The body then will perish not, meaning, it will not have an akala marana, untimely death. Inhale, control, exhale in measure prescribed. What we have been seeing, the measures of 16, 64, 32. Triumphant Lord, you will become the conch of victory, blowing the conch of victory, achievement heralding. Knowledge of science of breath leads to the Supreme Being. Etri, Irakki, Irgalum Purikkum, Kaatrai Pidikkum, Kanakku Arivar illai, Kaatrai Pidikkum, Kanakku Arivalarukku, Kootrai Udaikkum, Kuri adu Aame. So, inhalation, exhalation, retention, both the ways. Science of breath, thus consisting, it's called a science of breath. Kanakku here actually it does not mean mathematics, it is a science. Science of breath, they know not. But they who know the science of breath are destined to spurn the death of cord of death, untimely death. Effect of Puraka, Kumbhaka and Rechaka. Male Keel Nadu Pakkam, Mikku Ura Purithu. Paal aam irechagathal ul pavittu maal agi mundiyul kumbittu vaangave alalam undan arul peralame. Alalam undan means the Nilakanta, the one who has got a poison in it. That is alakalam. His blessings will come. So in Purakam, inhale deep. Male means the upper part, Kul means the lower part, Nadu means the. So how to inhale? Diaphragmatic breathing, thoracic breathing, both all, and cervical breathing. Cervical, thoracic, diaphragmatic. This is what they call. Here he has put it. All you should do to pervade up and down in middle full. In Kumbhakam, retain it around the navel. So special. In fact, one of the commentators for this text says, this hold is a special hold called Porai Nilai in Tamil. It is a special hold and it is near the navel. It is held. In Rechakam, it is absorbed within in due measure, limited. That is, it has to go shanagi, it has to go slowly. They who practice the science of breath thus reach the grace of Lord, who consumed the poison deadly, that is Shiva. So 573, time duration of inhaling, retaining and exhalation. Vamathil ஈரெட்டு மாத்திரை பூரித்தே ஏமுற்ற 32 இரேசித்து காமுற்ற பிங்களை கண்ணாக இவ்விரண்டோ மத்தால் எட்டெட்டு கும்பிக்க உண்மையே. Inhaling 16 matras, retaining, this is a different ratio. This bit different ratio, 16, 64, the same ratio, 16, 64, 32. There is one more ratio we're going to get later. So left inhale, here it looks like Chandra Bedana because the Nadi Shuddhi's idea is not given here, but it is also the same ratio. Those who control, they will see the light of truth. How to practice pranayama? Ittadu avveedu ilagadu ireshittu Putti pada Tashanadiyum Purithu Kotti pranan apananum kumbit nattam irukka namanillai thane. Inhale deep and steady. Very important. The prana fills 5 nadis, 10 nadis. 10 nadis, there are 72,000 nadis. 3 are important. And Ida, Pingala, Sushumna. And here 10 means that which ends in the eyes, ears, and all that. They are all the nadis. It filled because it has cleared all the malas. Exhale very slowly, that the body does not stir. It does not, it does not stir means when you are doing the pranayama, it is held. Retains prana, breath, and downward movement of the apana is held up. This is also the technique. Sit erect and vanquish death. How to sit and do. Purify body by breath control. Purapattu pukku, Tirihindra vayuvai, Neripada ulle, Ninmalam akil, Uruppu shivakum, Uromam karukkum, Purapattu bohan, Purishadayani, Purisadayoni. The breath within rises and wanders as it lists, but control that. Purify within using the fire within, then shall your limbs glow red. That is, they become, the body becomes so light, and it actually is kanti, they call as kanti in Sanskrit. That is the idea of redness here. It is not really redness. Hair turns dark means the body, the person gets back, and there is no even aging. And God within shall leave you never. That means the God is always there. The idea of getting linked. So the link was never lost. Kudam eduthu kudipukka mangayar, oduvar meeduvar pannirendu angulam, needuvar enviral kandipar naalviral, kudikkulil kola anji eluthu ame. Prana breath, damsel within the body, Ida and Pingala, runs in and around, out constant. If 12 matras inhale, that's why I told you, there is a slightly different ratio. The 8 matras exhale, 4 matras retain, special ratio. Inhale 12, exhale 8, hold 4. Shall make you divine in Shiva. Looks like this hold is coming after. It could also be either way. Learn to control breath and master breath. Pannirendu aanai pagaliravu ulladu. Pannirendu aanai pagan arigilan. Pannirendu aanai pagan arindapin. Pannirendu aanaiku pagaliravu illai. The word aanai means elephant. Here the word elephant means ego. So the elephant is 12 matra breath means the ego is there. Oh, when you are able to control through pranayama, the ego is also controlled because the kleshas come down. That is awaken night and day. The Maho, that is the Jiva, the Purusha, knows not the elephant first. But now, after control of the pranayama, he is able to control the ego. The elephant knows not the need, and in eternity it exists. Retain breath below the. So I am just taking 1 or 2 verses quickly on the Pratyahara, just 2 verses to examine because they are related to the pranayama. Now, Pratyahara, pranayama, I have completed all the verses which are given in this, all the 14 verses. Nabikku kizhe pannirendu angulam, tabikku mandiram thannai arigidar, tabikkum mandiram thannai arinda pin, kuvikkundu ஈசன் kudiyirundane. They know not the divine art of fixing the breath 12 matra long below the navel region. It is Mulabandha. It is Mooladhara, Mulabandha. Once they learn that art, the Lord enters within shouting in joy. The Lord is always there. Enters within means the idea of the idea of the Lord being visioned is seeing in joy. What Kundalini Yoga? I told you this is also called as Kundalini Yoga of in the Tirumandhiram. Mooladwarathai okkaram ittu iru. மேலை துவாரத்தின் மேல் மனம் வைத்து இரு. வேல் ஒத்த கண்ணை வெளியில் விழித்து இரு. காலத்தை வெல்லும் கருத்து இதுதானே. Close the Mooladhara orifice below the Mulabandha, through Mulabandha. Center your thought on Sahasrara orifice above. So take the prana, it has to go through that up to from Mooladhara to Sahasrara, and on that meditate in oneness. Fix your dagger-like vision on that void vast thus practicing yoga. So when it goes, it is what goes is only Kundalini. You shall vanquish time. புறப்பட்ட வாயு புகவிடா வண்ணம் திறப்பட்டு நிச்சயம் சேர்ந்துடன் நின்றால் உறப்பட்டு நின்றது உள்ளமும் ஆங்கே புறப்பட்டு போகான் பெரும் தகையானே. So pranayama helps pratyahara, which is stated in Yoga Sutra differently. Tataha kshiyate prakasha avaranam dharana sutta yogyata manasya. Here the author says it helps pratyahara. If breath is, that is exhaled, is contained within, the thoughts too are contained there. More the way of containing the thoughts are exhale is contained within. This is the clue here. Prachardana vidaranabhyam va pranasya, which is the Yoga Sutra 1.34. When the exhale hold is done, it is the way to control the mind. Fruits of 8-limbed yoga are very interesting. That's why I am taking this. The fruit of Yama is reaching the abode of the god, Devaloka. The fruit of Niyama is reaching the world of Shiva there. The fruit of Asana is the attainment of the status of Indra, even king of Devas. The fruit of Pranayama is welcomed by the celestials in the world of Shiva. The fruit of Pratyahara is to reach the world of Shiva and recognition by the Lord. Earlier we have reached, but now the Lord has recognized. The fruit of Dharana is to seek good path, turn away from this path, and even lead the celestials. The fruit of Dhyana is to reach all the worlds of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Devas. And the fruit of Samadhi is to transcend the limitations of the caste experiences. This is called experiences, what we have. Because there was a Karana there. This is a Karya. Caste means Karya. Karana, Karya. See, the Yoga Sutra talks about it. This experiences of us is caused by the past karma. So this is to transcend that limitation. Himself becomes the causal tattvas because he can take over everything. He has got the Jaya he will have. And ultimately unites with the uncaused being, which is the supreme being. Benefits of yoga, Maru Madiyumarityanum Marindri. That is how it has to be read. Tharu Padamal Tandode Talaipadil Uru Padadudal Vendum Ubayamum Paru Pada Inbam Parmishay Pongume. If the breath, Madi and Aditya means if the breaths of moon, Ida and Pingala course their way through spinal channel unhindered, Kundalini Yoga, thine body imperishable shall be, and abiding joys well up here below. That is the way of yoga true. He says in 883, which is the last verse of the third, that is the third mantra, tantra. This is the way of true yoga. So with this, I end my talk and I thank again with pranams Maharaj AmritMahotsav ji for giving me this opportunity to study this text in detail, to tell you the truth, and to make a very, very light presentation in a way that I could do it. Thanks again. Namaste to everyone.
So we are extremely thankful to Sri Sridharan for being able to present 3,000 verses of Tirumandhiram in just 60 minutes. He presented the very important verses, and the most interesting is drawing parallels from the Yoga Sutra as well as the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which are rather well known, and how this system of yoga has been penetrating for a very, very long time. Only the language is slightly different. So this great yogis, they see yoga is not a mere intellectual exercise. It has been practiced, it has been thoroughly demonstrated and proven for thousands of years by hundreds of thousands of practitioners. Even now, as Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi used to say, that many siddhas in the valley in Tiruvannamalai, in the Arunachala hill, which is impenetrable. Once you try to penetrate and see what is there, and a swarm of wasps came and bit him terribly, and then was swollen, and very old woman, maybe Mahamaya, we say it's Mahamaya, Devi herself, she said, Kattala Poravane, and I am the pole. You rascal, why did you come here? Don't penetrate, go. Ramana Maharshi mentions this. Kattalapara means you are going to face death. Don't penetrate. He says hundreds of thousands of siddhas are still meditating. Their only concern is welfare of the world, Jagat Hita. For the Jagat Hita, hundreds of thousands of yogis and siddhas are meditating in the Himalayan caves, in Arunachala Hill, and how many places we do not know. So there is a statement in Sanskrit, Santo Bhumim Tapasat Harayanti. All the great saints and sages, they are holding the earth through their tapas, through their penances, and through their yogic power. Otherwise, how is India surviving even now? We are so fortunate to be born in India and to have some idea of this great yogic tradition. And I was very particular that we should know about the various yogic traditions all over India. We just got a glimpse. Later on, if God wills, once again and again, you will see in the yogic text, Parameshwara Kripa is always mentioned. In fact, Yoga Sutra also says, Ishvara Pradhanatva. Only by Ishvara's grace. Even Advaita says, Avadhuta first verse, Ishvara Anugrahadeva Pumsam Advaita Vasana. Advaita Vasana, the attraction to Advaita comes because of Ishvara Prasada. And therefore, if God wills, if God graces, later on we can have a series, Tamil tradition, and then he was also mentioned Natha tradition. Natha tradition is very famous in Maharashtra. One thing we could not accommodate this time is the Gyaneshwari tradition, which comes in the Gyana. It's also highly yogic text. Gyaneshwari, the commentary of the Sant Gyaneshwar and Gita is highly yogic. So the yoga tradition, the proper authentic tradition all over India has to be revived. At least let us know, as Swami Vivekananda said, my ambition is to put in motion a machinery that will bring to the doors of everybody what our forefathers thought about some of the momentous questions of life. So that is our duty, to bring these great ideas and then throw them before the modern world. And ideas can transform people. And even if one idea catches somebody, that will completely transform his life. Through the transformation of individual, the society will be transformed. The transformation of society, the world will be transformed. That's why it is said, the Swami Vivekananda, once again I quote and end this talk, if a holy man sits in a cave and thinks 5 holy thoughts all his life and passes away there, these thoughts will penetrate the walls of the cave, pass it on to some mind or a heart, and work out there. That is the power of holiness, that is the power of thought. And he also said, holiness and purity are not the monopoly of any religion or race. All religions and all over the world have produced men and women of exalted character. And India is specialized in Jivan Muktas. Once I asked one group of Europeans who used to come to Ramanashram every year, terrible heat and mosquitoes, food that didn't suit them. Why do you come to India every time? They used to come to Ramanashram and then Himalayas. Then that person said, you see, we have everything in the West, but we don't have Jivan Muktas. I come to India to have darshan of Jivan Muktas. Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti is the only purpose of human life. We have demonstrated, experimented, and unless tamatmastam ye nubhashyanti dhiras tesham shanti shashvati itaresham, tamatmastam ye nubhashyanti dhiras tesham sukham shashvatam itaresham. Unless you realize the Atman vision, there cannot be any shashvata sukha, eternal joy. There cannot be any Shashwati Shanti, eternal peace. Nanya Pantha Vidyate Naya. Taratishogam Atmavit. Only a person who has realized the Atman vision can go beyond sorrow. In the present day world, when people are afflicted with sorrow, conflicted and confused, strife-torn world, this great message of yoga and Vedanta are the great saviors, and we fortunately are the custodians of this great knowledge. We may be poor, we may be ordinary, but still we carry that great tradition. As Bhagavan Shankara says in the Gita Bhashya, Jagat Shantiranantaram, in the 12th chapter, he says, we may be very ordinary, but we come with that great tradition. Agasthyena samudra pitaha iti idanindana brahmana abhi stuyante. We come in the tradition of Agastya. He was a Brahmana, and we, coming in this very poor though we may be, coming in the tradition of Agastya, we also are entitled to the great respect and glory because we carry this great tradition. We are so happy. Or Sridharan is carrying the Krishnamacharya tradition of yoga, that I'm so delighted that he could do some justice to Tirumandhiram. We'll have more of your talks later on. And I was telling the brahmachari who is in charge of the coordinating the yoga. So, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we will ask you to do some classes for our boys because nobody is able to teach it properly. Thank you once again. Om
Shanti, Shanti.
Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.